Now is the time to sell your Dodge Challenger Hellcat. Yes, Hellcat prices are plummeting. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the stats and tell you why now might be the best time to sell your Hellcat. All right, setting off in my own Hellcat, and let's talk about the trends that I've noticed in my research for this video. Now, over the last little bit, I've been noticing that prices for a lot of vehicles have started to come down. You may have noticed this as well. I mean, the prices for Rivians, for Lucids, for a lot of the vehicles that commanded large markups during the pandemic, those have started to stabilize, and prices have now kind of become normal used car prices. You can now find a used vehicle for cheaper than a new vehicle, which is kind of how it always should have been, but it really wasn't the trend for the last 2 years or so. And so that got me curious into thinking about what are the prices for Challenger and Charger Hellcats, seeing as how they're not going to continue making them after 2023. So are those prices really going to escalate, or are they going to stay the same, or are they coming down? And I'm here to tell you they're actually coming down. Now, I do have evidence to back up this information. I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. I started doing some research, and here's what I did. I went on to some of the largest car auction websites. We're talking Cars and Bids, Bring a Trailer, and at the same time, I also looked at some of the local classifieds and some of the large classifieds websites like Cars.com, Car Gurus. And the information I started gathering related to what was the price that Hellcats were either bid or sold to on these auction websites. And I gathered this spreadsheet of information. Now, full disclosure, there are some caveats I want to mention here. First off, I only looked at Challenger Hellcats. I didn't do a search for Charger Hellcats. Part of the reason is because I own a Challenger Hellcat and I was genuinely curious what my value would be. Now, Charger Hellcats are probably going to be pretty similar, maybe a little bit higher than the Challenger Hellcat, just because there's more people that could use Charger Hellcats. They're 4 doors, 5 seats. You could easily fit, a family of 4 in one of those vehicles. Whereas with the Challenger, you're kind of limited because the back seats, although they're usable, they're not the most comfortable to get in and out of. So take that for what it's worth. The other thing I want to mention is I didn't look at a specific mileage. Now, from some of the data I gathered, some of the vehicles were really low miles. And as I'm sure you know, vehicles with low miles generally have a higher price tag than vehicles with high miles. And so, some of the data is really biased towards some of these lower mileage vehicles because that tends to be what some people list on auction websites because they're hoping to get more money on them because they're such low mileage vehicles that they're going to have a little bit more demand because they're pretty much brand new. That said, I also didn't look at a particular year. I was just looking at any of the years starting from 2015 on of Challengers that came with the Hellcat engine. Now, the majority of the data out there is really on the narrow body standard Challengers. There's not as many wide body Challenger Hellcats like the vehicle I'm sitting in today, or red eyes, or even super stocks or jailbreaks. There are a handful of them, but there's really just not that much data out there for those higher end trim levels to really make up a good decision as to where prices are heading for those specific trims. So now that those caveats are over and you know where my data is coming from, now let's talk about what my results discovered. And the answer based on my data is that prices are pretty much where they were back in 2021. So if you look at the data, you can see in 2021 there was a certain level, then it jumped up in 2022 and kind of stayed there up through, I would say, around June of 2023, and now it's come back down to 2021 levels. Now, what I discovered was the price of a Dodge Challenger Hellcat from June 2023 to November 2023 is averaging around $51,000. To be exact, the average comes out to $51,788. Now, the one wide body Hellcat that I was able to find sold for around $62,500. The handful of wide body red eyes I found sold for around $64,000. And then there was a super stock that sold just under $87,000. Going up from there, the average price of a jailbreak red eye sold for just under $99,000. And then the average price of the handful of Dodge Challenger Black Ghosts that sold on these auction websites came out to about $129,000. But again, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to focus on the narrow body Hellcats because that's really what a lot of people are out there wanting to buy. That's what these auction websites are selling, and that is your entry into the Hellcat engine. Now, the $52,000 or so for a narrow body Challenger Hellcat really surprised me because given all the hype and the discussion about Challenger and Charger prices and Hellcat prices skyrocketing through the roof, that price is actually kind of close to where it was before the pandemic. I remember seeing Challenger and Charger Hellcats selling for $45,000, $48,000. They were generally higher mileage ones, but still, you could get one for under 50 grand. Now, I actually went a step further, and I went back to June of 2023 and looked back in time at all of the prior auctions. And I gathered all this data. And again, there's more information on the narrow body Challenger Hellcat. And what I found was the average price of vehicles from June of 2023 to pretty much June of 2021, so the 2 years prior, was about $56,783. So if you take the difference between the average price of a Challenger before June 2023 and the average price of a Challenger Hellcat after June 2023, you come out with a difference about $4,995. Now, about $5,000, it may not seem like a huge difference, but that is about a 9.6% drop in prices in just about 6 months. That is a significant amount. I genuinely think you could probably find a narrow body Hellcat Challenger for just under $50,000 in your local community. Yes, I get that the average price is around $51,000, but a lot of the vehicles on these auction websites are lower mileage, really well maintained. They've been garage kept for 8 years. Not everybody treats their car the same way. And even if you don't, doesn't mean the car is gonna be unreliable. There are some people that maybe drove their vehicle around a little bit more, and so they have some higher mileage, but it doesn't mean they didn't take care of their car. And on those vehicles, you could probably get them for under $50,000. I think a wide body Challenger will probably go best case scenario in the high 50s, a red eye somewhere in the 60s, and then it goes up from there. Obviously with the super stocks, the jailbreaks, and the black ghost getting the highest value above $100,000. Now those trim levels are still asking for really high prices because there's just fewer of them out there. Now, I'm sad to say, if you're one of those people that bought a Challenger Hellcat just a few months ago with hopes of flipping it in just 6 months, I think those days are gone, and it's probably best to cut your losses now because prices are only going to keep coming down. At the same time, if you're one of those that bought the vehicle before prices started skyrocketing and you want to make a quick buck, now is probably one of your last chances to do so before prices really start falling down. Now, there's a couple reasons why prices have started to come down for these vehicles. Now, I'm not an economist, but this is just something I've noticed and just some of the data. First off, inflation continues to be affecting people's pocketbooks. Even though it's lower than it was back in June 2022, inflation is still a thing. And at the same time, people no longer have that extra government stimulus money just sitting in their bank accounts. People have kind of run dry of that. And so now they're just living based off of their paychecks. At the same time, you've got interest rates hitting record highs where people don't really want to spend all that money on interest rates. An average loan 5 years ago may have cost X amount, and now it's X plus 20% in terms of monthly payment standpoint. In addition, right now, people generally have a negative view of the economy. They don't really know what's going to happen in 6 months. You can't really plan ahead with a 5 to 7 year car loan when you don't really know what's going to happen 6 to 12 months from now because maybe you might lose your job. In addition, Dodge still has quite a bit of inventory built up over the last year. You can go onto some of these classifieds websites and still find 2022 model year Dodge Challenger Hellcats. Yes, you heard that correctly. There's still a handful of new 2022 model year Hellcats on dealership lots. And believe me, those ones are going to see the largest discounts because no dealership is going to want to sell a 2-year-old vehicle. So I think all of those things combined to contributing to the price of these vehicles starting to come back down to normal. Now, that brings me to the last point I want to make in this video, and that is something I've been hearing for the last 3 or 4 years. And that is people saying that the prices of Hellcats are only going to go up. It's going to become a collector vehicle because they're ending production and everything's going electrified, and you're going to be able to own $1 million car. I mean, I'm a little bit exaggerating, but a lot of people genuinely believe that the prices of Hellcats are going to go up. And I've kind of always been in the camp of that not actually being true. And here's why I say that. When you take a look at vehicles that have actually increased in value, there's really not that many of them, especially when you account for inflation. But inflation adjusted, there are some vehicles that have increased in value. And when you look at how many of those particular vehicle was produced, it's typically less than 20,000. I mean, the Shelby GT350 or GT500 from the late 60s, early 70s, they only made like 5,000 of those. When you take a look at, a Mazda RX-7, and those have seen record prices as well, they actually made less than 14,000 of those in the United States. And so to have a collector vehicle, it's really based on supply and demand. And when there's not that much supply, but a good amount of demand, you're gonna have prices go up. It's what we saw during the pandemic and in 2022. The problem with the Hellcat is even though there's a pretty good demand for these vehicles, as cars start to age, the demand for Hellcats is going to come down because technology evolves. There's going to be newer cars that are faster, more powerful, more technologically packed. And even though they may not have the exact same sound as the Hellcat, you're not going to have the same exact feeling as a Hellcat, the average consumer is probably not going to really remember the Hellcat as being an iconic vehicle. The second part of that is just how many Hellcats they made. Now, Dodge doesn't publish exactly how many Hellcats they produced, but based on my research and stuff that Motor Trend has reported, there's been probably about 100,000 Hellcat-powered vehicles released by Stellantis. That includes the TRX, the Challengers, the Chargers, the Grand Cherokees, the Durangos. Pretty much every vehicle that has come with a Hellcat engine totals about 100,000 vehicles. Now, obviously, the Challenger and Charger make up a smaller percentage of that, but there's still a lot of this Hellcat engine driving around throughout your local communities. Which means that in order for prices for these cars to go up, you're gonna need a lot of demand. And I honestly just don't see that happening. I don't see there being that much demand for 100,000 vehicles to be able to prop up the prices of these cars. I mean, you can see this with the first generation Ford Mustang. They made pretty much over 1 million first-gen Ford Mustangs back in the 60s. And even today, you could pick up a 1960s Mustang for somewhere around $20,000, $25,000, which is more than it was back then, but inflation adjusted, it's not worth more than it was back in the 60s. My best guess about the prices of the Hellcats is over time, maybe in 20, 30 years, I could see the prices of these cars maybe come back up to where they were when this car was brand new. Or maybe slightly discounted from brand new. But in the next 5 years, I don't necessarily see these cars really skyrocketing in price to the point where people want to make a quick buck. They can easily buy one, wait 1 or 2 years and flip it and make double the price of the car. Those days are gone and I don't think they're ever gonna come back. But if you're an enthusiast that keeps your car for a very long time and you happen to own a Hellcat, I would probably think that in the next 30 years, if you still own the Hellcat, you probably haven't lost much value in the vehicle. Maybe you'll make a little bit of money if you choose to sell it. But I really don't think this is gonna be on the list of collector vehicles and auctioned off at Barrett-Jackson for $1 million. I mean, hey, maybe I will be proven wrong and I would love to be wrong about this because it'd be awesome if I could make $1 million on my Hellcat. But I just don't think that's gonna be the reality. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video talking about where the market is headed for the Hellcat, where prices were and where they are today, and how you can find a pretty decent deal on a used Challenger Hellcat. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also check me out on all the social media at Schwazy_. Let me know what your thoughts are about the prices of Challenger and Charger Hellcats. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.